but JP is going to come up and give those details for some fun summer events coming up. Give it up for JP. Technical difficulties.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. It's not your last long. It's my fault since I didn't turn it on. How's everybody this morning? It does feel like a Wednesday. It's kind of weird. Yeah, so summer is just around the corner. You guys got what, like 1 week of school left? No week, 3 days, no weeks of school left? That's exciting. So we are excited for the summer. Summer is a time, if you're new to our student ministry, summer is a time of year where things change, but they pick up in a really fun way. And so we are, doing some new things this summer. We're trying a couple different things, and we're trying some things that are familiar. And so we're going to throw this next slide up, which is kind of the breakdown of what are the 3 kind of rhythms and basic elements of summer for us. And so the first one is Engage. Engage is something that we do on Wednesday nights. These are fun events, just opportunities for us to hang out, build some community. And so we'll have 6 Engage nights on Wednesday nights coming up. A lot of those will require registration, but Jess is going to talk about the first one here in a second, which won't. So May 31st, June 7th, June 21st, June 28th, and then July 5th and 19th. On each of those nights, we'll do something fun on a Wednesday night, so be looking for that. The next thing is Summer Sundays, so we're going to change up what Sunday mornings look like a little bit. In the past, we've done these smaller classes, so these equipped classes that you maybe are used to if you've been around. We're not doing that this summer. We're changing it up a little bit and having a large group conversation in the gym, all together, middle school and high school. We're going to do some things different than that as well. We'll probably have tables set up kind of like this and have some more opportunities for your conversation through those discussions. And so that'll be 9 o'clock here Sunday morning in our student building. We're going to have kind of a topic in June that we'll cover, and then another one in July. And I'm really excited for that July conversation because we're going to have a conversation about serving. What does it look like to serve not only in your homes, in your schools, in your communities, but at our church, whether that's Kids Min or the cafe, the main worship center. How do you get plugged into doing that as well? And then finally, we have this thing called discipleship groups. So this is new as well. So we've in the past done something called D groups on Thursdays at lunch with the interns, kind of hang out. But we recognize that especially for high schoolers, midday on Thursday is usually not great because some of you guys have jobs or you're working some camp or whatever. And so we're trying something new, and that is these discipleship groups. And so pretty soon you'll be able to go up and sign up for a discipleship group that will happen at different times of the day, different days or nights of the week. So you just find the one that works for you when you sign up to jump in. There will be 5 meetings throughout the summer, and that will just depend on the leader that you're with and what day they want to meet. It might be at somebody's house, it might be up here. If you're in a really good group, you might be in Whataburger, I don't know. And so that announcement's coming soon with what that schedule looks like. We would love for you to hang out with us in these discipleship groups. We think this is, if you're looking for another way to keep growing, to keep the conversation going during the summer, discipleship groups is probably the most intimate way to get that. So do that, sign up because that's coming.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, JP.
Yeah.
All right, a couple of quick announcements for the next 2 weeks. Wednesday, we do not have group. The next Sunday, we have a family service and big service, so there will not be worship. Make sure to go to the 9 or 10:30 service with your family in big church. And then on the 31st, who's going to summer camp?
Yep.
All right, so we are going to have a summer camp meeting on the 31st. That is a Wednesday. And then right after that, we're also doing our summer kickoff. So if you're not coming to summer camp, that's fine. Make sure to still come so we can kick off summer the right way. We're going to hang out. We might have a surprise for you there. And then summer Sundays, our first Sunday is going to be June 4th. And we have some big surprises there for you too. But stay on social media, get those details. And we'll go ahead and play a game. Right?
Yeah.
Am I missing anything? Cool. Let's play a game. Maybe. Okay. It's called Letter Stack. So the people at your table are going to be your team. So if you have a whiteboard, raise it up. And Expo marker, everybody has one, right? Whiteboard, Expo. Cool. Walker, do you want to join him? Perfect. All right, letter stack. Let's give you some instructions really quick. So we're going to build words using only letters from the corresponding colors. So So each color will have certain letters that it goes with. So let's give an example. Maybe. So let's say blue equals A, B, C, Z. Use any of the letters from the corresponding colors to make a 3-letter word. Okay? So we're gonna get your minds working. So green, pink, and purple, you would have all of those letters in access. Does that make sense? Make sense? Okay, let's try it. You're going to go ahead and write it on the whiteboard. We're going to give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Maybe you like. Alright, so the first one is yellow, purple, red. You have to make a 3-letter word out of those letters. Go. And no, any of those letters. First one to get, are we doing first one to get it, JP?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do first one to get it. What is that? Doe or dot? What is it? 8? 8? I'm going to do this table right here. You guys get 1 point. Alright. Let's do another one. Okay, green, blue, and purple. A 3-letter word. First one to get a 3-letter word gets a point. Okay, we got wig over here. Let's see. Double check. Nice. Okay, 1 point over here. Next. Blue, pink, and green. What does that say? Chalk? J-A-W. Okay, 1 point over here, one. Okay. Next. Blue, yellow, purple. Yeah? Okay, there you all got a point? Alright. Oh, we have to do a 4-letter word with one of these. Purple, blue, green, and red. What does that say? Dewey? Dewey? Is Dewey a word? I'll give it to you. Alright. No D? Wait, come back. I'm gonna give it to y'all. Alright. Set, go. Pink, red, yellow, green. Man, if you're colorblind, this game's messed up. Nope. That's not what that says. Alright. What table are you with, Jacob? Alright. Raise your hand if you have a point. Alright. Jacob, you have a point? Raise your hand a point. Okay, it's just gonna be between you guys, and we'll do the most words you can do with the next one. Between all tables that have a point. Got it? Yeah, the most words. Okay, ready, set, go. Okay, pink, yellow, blue. 4-letter word.
Thumbs up. That's us too. Is that what DYM game? Yeah.
I'll give you 20 seconds.
We basically moved to
Most words.
like it's just very
Get out of here. 10 seconds.
I love their stuff. Just super good food.
Come on. 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
So we use that Thursday nights. Sunday mornings we basically moved to creating stuff. Sometimes when
Okay,
you
read your
graphic ideas.
You have 9?
We try to put Thursdays just to help our families have the same conversation.
Are all of those 4-letter words? I didn't hear all of them.
Conversations.
You have 9 Nothing?
If you don't-
All right, you guys, see me after and we'll try and get you something. Okay? Cool.
Kind of covering two different things.
All right, we're gonna have worship. Go ahead and come up and we'll pray for that. Can we get the music to it?
Fade that music out, Eli.
All right, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity for high schoolers to all come together, Lord. Help prepare us for worshiping you, God, and help speak through JP and soften our hearts to your word as well, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity and may you bless it, Lord. We love you and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Good morning. Please stand and worship with us. There was a moment when the lights went out, when darkness So in both of these songs and later today, we are talking about surrender, and we're still continuing the series of Killing the Spider. And so the first week we talked about pride, and so I think this week is going to build off of that, and just talking about how we need to surrender our pride and surrender our wants and our desires that are not always God-focused and are more often self-focused, and we need to surrender those in order to seek the will of God and seek the glorification of God. And so in this next song, we're going to be singing with that mindset of surrendering all of our tradition, all of our religion, so that we can glorify God to the fullest of our abilities. Here is where I lay it down, every burden, every bound. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down, every lie and every vow. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you. personal, and for being steadfast in who you are and in your love for us. I pray that we would just be able to have spirits that surrender to you, and just be able to live life with hands and arms open wide to what you have to give us and to take away from us. I pray that that's what we see to the message by JP today, that you would just speak through him and that you would speak directly to us, so that we can receive and learn more about you. We love you and thank you ever so much for Jesus. Amen.
Well, all right, y'all. What have y'all thought about this Kill the Spider series so far? Sorry, we're gonna rearrange here. Yes, this Kill the Spider series, man, I love this. I felt convicted by this. Hope you have too, in a weird, like, shaming way. Just honestly, like, hope that you're feeling God moving and seeing that there's this problem that's deeper than just the surface level, right? There's a problem that we have to address that's deeper than just trying to clean up the mess of the webs. We've got to get at the source of that. We've got to get at the root. And so this is week 3, our final week. We've talked about pride the first week. We looked at Saul, right? King Saul, and how just time and time again he was prideful and he was worried about what people thought of him, and he did the thing that he thought was right. He tried to kill David over and over again because he was jealous of him. And pride is this thing that just eats at us and causes all of this jealousy and comparison and all of these things. And we talked about the surrender to that, like is humbling yourself before God and recognizing that we have nothing to offer, only God is in control of that. Last week, Amanda did a great job talking about fear. We looked at Gideon, which is another judge or leader of Israel, and God called him to go to battle, and he was scared and he hid, but God called him to not worry about the things that weren't under his control, and just to trust that God has that. Fear causes doubt, trust causes faith, right? And so this idea of, man, eliminate the spider of fear. So in this last week, we're talking about this last spider that we need to kill, this last root of our sin. And honestly, I would say this is maybe the biggest one. It's a spider, it's a root thing that even causes pride and fear. It's the thing that maybe you could attribute as the greatest root sin of all. Like if we could fix this, maybe we could eliminate the majority of the sin that we see in our life. So before we get to that and reveal what that is, I want to pause and talk about something really important that happened this week that maybe you're aware of, maybe you're not. On Tuesday night was the NBA draft lottery. And the San Antonio Spurs had this margin of 14% chance that they were going to get this #1 pick. And if you're not a sports fan, just track with me for a second. There's this guy from Paris, France, named Victor Wembanyama, who is like 7'5", has a 79 wingspan, and plays like Kevin Durant. Like this guy's a baller. They're saying maybe the greatest prospect like in team sports ever, not just basketball, but in anything, which is a lot of hype, and that makes me nervous. But here's the deal. The Spurs had this 14% chance of getting the rights to pick this guy, the #1 pick. And the way that works in the NBA, there's literally like ping pong balls, and they pull them out one at a time based on these percentage chances, and whoever gets the #1 pick, like they get to pick whoever they want. So they do this thing where they reveal from like number 12 or 10 all the way to the top. And we had been at Kinsler's end of season baseball party at Peter Piper Pizza, which is terrible. It's terrible. And so on the way home, Kinsler rode with Michaela. They were already inside the house. Colby rode with me. Colby falls asleep in his car seat behind me. I pull into the garage, and they're about to announce the top 4. And I'm like, I'm not going to risk missing this. So I've got it on my phone, like pulled up YouTube TV on my phone. I'm watching this in my car, and they're revealing, and they're like, #4, Houston Rockets. I'm like, dude, they had the next best chance at this point to get it. And they're like, Portland Trailblazers. I'm like, no way. Is this about to happen? And then they said, the Charlotte Hornets, which means there's only one team left, and that's my team. That's the San Antonio Spurs. And I went nuts. I'm in the garage. Michaela and kids are inside. Colby's asleep, and I'm just like, let's go! Like I'm in my driveway, scaring my neighbors. Like, we got it! Let's go! And I'm running the house, and Michaela and kids are inside. I'm like, Michaela, we got it! We got the pick! We got it! She's like, what are you talking about? I said, no. Like the season that was terrible. week. We're getting windy. It's going to be good again. And she goes, where's Colby? Oh, yeah. So I had to go outside and get Colby out of his car seat. There was this moment where I just got caught up in this thing that was really exciting. And I just completely neglected this responsibility I have as a dad. And Colby's just asleep. He doesn't know that it happened, so it's fine. Don't tell him. But can you imagine if I did that with other things? If I just forgot my responsibility as a dad? Like if I strap the kids in and go to Walmart because I've got to do some grocery shopping and it's 105 outside because it's summer and I just leave them in there and walk away. And I go shop, right? That would be really bad. Or if I was at home with them and I'm getting hungry and so I make lunch or I make dinner and I just kind of forget they might need to eat too. And they're like, hey dad, I'm like, no, I'm good. I already got my lunch, like I'm fine. Right? Like, can you imagine if I just ignored that responsibility? If I ignore the reality that I'm a dad and that I have kids? Or take that for yourself, right? Like, imagine if you just started ignoring realities in your life. Like, if you came home and your parents were like, hey, where were you? Curfew was 9 o'clock. And you're like, you don't have authority over me. Like, that wouldn't go well, right? Because the reality is that they do. Or if you just got in a car and started driving on the highway, and you just ignored the reality that you're still just 13 or 14, like, and you just ignored the reality that you don't have a license, you're not allowed to do this. Or if you ignored the reality that you're supposed to go to school and you just stayed home and did your own thing, you ignored the reality that you have a job and you have to show up and perform at your job, otherwise you're going to get fired. Right? If we ignore the reality that's in front of us and just do what we want instead, and we allow ourselves to get distracted by these other things, that's going to go poorly for us. Just like me leaving Colby in the car because I'm excited about this draft day. And so the thing that we're going to talk about today, the spider that we need to kill, this root of even pride and fear, is this idea of ungodliness. Ungodliness is this root that we can get to, that all sin basically can get back to this idea that we have this attitude towards God. And I think when you hear the word ungodliness, it's easy for us to think, oh, that just means wicked, that just means sinful, that just means doing bad things. But that's not what this word means. This guy, Jerry Bridges, you guys have probably heard me mention him before. Love Jerry Bridges, he's a stud, read his books. He describes ungodliness this way. He says, ungodliness may be defined as living one's everyday life with little or no thought of God, or God's will, or of God's glory, or of one's dependence on God. Ungodliness is this decision to just ignore the reality that God is in control, that God knows everything, that God created you, that God sustains you. All of these things. It's this idea of us just ignoring that and then choosing to do what we want to do instead. Right? It's this idea of being distracted by something that's in front of us that we want and just ignoring the reality of God. And so there's lots of examples that we could get into of this, but we're going to look at Judges chapter 13. We're going to look at this guy named Samson. Maybe you've heard of him. Samson's like a classic Sunday school story. This guy that's really strong. Just for some context, while you're turning there, I'm actually in Samson 14, by the way, sorry. Some context for this. Samson is living this period of time. Amanda talked about this a little bit last week, where there are these judges, these leaders that are kind of coming through Israel and leading God's people. And time again, Israel is rebelling and they're disobeying God. They're living ungodly, right? They're ignoring the reality of his leadership. And so Samson is the final judge that God gives his people before he kind of transitions to having a king. And Samson, his birth is actually like miraculous. So Israel has been in captivity from the Philistines, or by the Philistines, for 40 years. For 40 years, the Philistines have just wrecked them and controlled them. And so God sends an angel to show up to this set of parents who are barren, they can't have kids, and this angel shows up and says, hey, you guys are going to have a child. Right? Very similar to the angel showing up and telling Mary that Jesus is going to be born. This angel shows up and says, you're going to have a baby. And your responsibility is to help this baby, to raise this child within this Nazirite vow. He's going to be set apart from the Lord. The Nazirite vow was this thing that is outlined in Numbers chapter 6, and it's this idea that people who would take this vow would be making a promise to be separated for God and for his purposes. People like Samuel, who we talked about in week 1, and John the Baptist were Nazarites. So there are a couple of rules that went with that. One of those rules was that they didn't drink, right? They didn't drink wine or really consume anything from the vine. They weren't going to get wasted. Another one of those things was that they were going to stay away from anything dead. Like, there's even rules about, like, if you're in the presence of somebody and they die, like, the Nazarite had to do a certain thing to get away from that, and they offer something to make up for the fact that he was around them. And then the third one is that they didn't cut their hair. Like, they just let their hair grow. And all of these things were basically symbols of this promise that they made, that I'm going to be set apart just for God. I'm going to be set apart for him. And so Samson's parents are told that Samson is going to be this next judge. He's going to be a Nazarite from birth. He's going to be set apart from God, and he needs to follow these 3 rules. So we pick it up in Judges chapter 14. It says right before this that the God is with Samson, that he's moving in him, that his spirit is in him. And then Samson starts to make some poor decisions, right? So 14 verse 1 says, Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among our people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. It's pretty simple. Samson thought this chick was hot, right? And she's a Philistine, and so he comes to his parents. There's a couple things wrong with this. He comes to his parents and says, Hey, that's the woman I want. First of all, that's not how that worked in their time, right? Arranged marriage was a thing in this time period where the parents actually chose the spouse for their kid. And yeah, like we see that as weird today, but that's how that worked then. And so, first of all, Samson's being super disrespectful by saying, like, hey, go get her. That's the one that I'm going to marry. And then secondly, she's a Philistine. Like the very people that God has raised Samson up and given strength to defeat, he is pursuing this Philistine woman. And it says, the reason is because it's right in my eyes. He says, because I think this is right. I think this is good. This is what I'm going to do. And so, like, regretfully, his parents agreed. So they head to Timnah to arrange this marriage. And then something crazy happens. We pick it back up in verse 5. It says, Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came toward him, roaring. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hands, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. Dude was attacked by a lion and killed it with his bare hands. Right? God has given him this strength to lead people, physical strength to lead his people to defeat the Philistines. He's on the way to arrange this marriage with a Philistine woman, and a lion attacks him. I'm a little confused by this passage because it says that he tears the lion apart as one tears a young goat. Like, in Bible times, were they just tearing goats apart? Like, I thought about going to a farm and finding a goat and seeing, if I could. But that's weird to me. I don't really understand that. But the point here is that Samson was strong. He didn't have any weapon or anything. This lion comes up and he tears this lion apart. This guy is jacked, right? And so he kills this lion, and then he continues on his journey to do what's right in his eyes. And the story about this lion continues, though. It says, after some days he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion, and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on eating it as he went. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. Wait, what? So he kills this lion, he goes back and finds the body. A swarm of bees has made a home there and produced honey. And he's like, that looks good. Honey's sweet, I'll take some of that. And he literally reaches into the carcass of this dead lion and scoops out honey. And it's like his road snack, like he's just gonna eat some honey on the way there. But remember, Samson has made this Nazarite vow. And one of the things that we said, one of the 3 rules is that you stay away from dead things, right? So in this action, he just sees the sweetness of this honey and says, that looks good, I'm going to do that because it's right in my eyes. And he scoops this honey out. He even gives it to his parents, who don't even know that he killed the lion, by the way. And he gives that honey to them as well. Like, really weird that you would choose to do that in some ways, but he was hungry, he wanted some honey. He thought it was right to just take some honey out of his carcass. But in this moment, he completely ignores this promise that he had made to God. He ignores the reality that he's supposed to stay away from these dead things. And so, we continue on. This marriage gets arranged, and as a part of this marriage being arranged, there's this 7-day feast that happens before marriage. Parts of the text call this woman Samson's wife. She's actually not his wife yet. She's his fiance. And leading up to the marriage, there would be this 7-day feast where they would celebrate and drink heavily, right? And so Samson is the one who throws this party. And so he brings in all of this wine and heavy drink, breaking another one of these promises that he's made to God. And for 7 days, they're just getting wasted, celebrating, waiting for this marriage to happen. And Samson is feeling himself a little bit. He's like, yeah, I tore this line apart. Maybe I can profit off of this in another way. So he tells the Philistines this riddle, and he makes a bet with them. He says, hey, if you can figure out my riddle by the end of this feast, by the end of 7 days, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. Which are like, okay, big jackpot, right? But in that time, if you had 30 changes of clothes and 30 linens, you were wealthy. It was hard to accumulate that much clothing. We have closets and drawers full of clothes. That's not how that worked in Bible times. And so this is kind of a big bet. But he said that works either way. If you don't figure out the riddle, you have to give me that. And if you do figure out the riddle, I have to give you that. And so for 7 days, the Philistines are kind of freaking out. What are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? We can't afford this. They're baffled by this. And Samson sees this opportunity for greed and thinks he's smarter than everybody else. And so he's like, we're going to succeed. I'm going to look wealthy because of this, right? So we pick it up in verse 16. Because these Philistines go to Samson's fiance and they say, hey, figure out the answer for us so that we don't have to pay this guy. And it says they even threaten to burn her and her father's house if they don't get the answer. And so she's like, oh shoot, I gotta go get the answer. So starting in verse 16, it says, and Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people and you have not told me what it is. And he said to her, behold, I have not even told my father nor my mother. Shall I tell you? She wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. She betrays him, right? And you see where this is going. She tells the people, they figure it out. And they're like, all right, Samson, we figured out your riddle. Pay up. You owe us these 30 outer garments, these 30 changes of clothes. Pay up. And he realizes that his fiance, his bride-to-be, is the one who betrayed him, and he's furious. But a bet's a bet, right? He's got to pay for it. So he's angry. He goes to this other town of Philistines, kills 30 dudes, and takes their clothes, and brings them back and says, there you go. I made my payment. Right? Because Samson's jacked. He ripped this lion apart. He just goes down, kills 30 guys, takes their clothes, here we go. I made my payment. And he's so angry that he leaves. He's like, I just got to get out of here. I can't believe she betrayed me or whatever. And then he comes back to consummate his marriage, to finalize that, to have sex with his wife. He's excited to be back in Timnah. And he gets there, and her father gave his daughter away to Samson's best man. He's like, I thought you weren't coming back, so she's with your best man. And he's like, excuse me, what? He's like, yeah. And then her father even goes as far as to say, well, her younger sister's prettier, though. You can have her. Samson's like, no. So here's what Samson does. This is crazy. You think you've been mad at somebody before and sought out revenge? Samson goes and catches 300 foxes, or jackals, we're not really sure which. He catches 300 of these foxes, pairs them up, takes their tails, ties them together, and puts a torch in the middle, lights these torches, and then sends these 300 foxes, 150 pairs of foxes, into their wheat fields and into their orchards and their olive groves, and he wrecks all of their food, all of their way of life, and just destroys it. Right? Because he's mad and he's done because he's been betrayed, and now his wife's gone. Samson's got anger issues, right? He's got revenge issues. He caught these 300 foxes and burns all their stuff. And then the Philistines are mad. I think this is kind of funny, maybe not. I shouldn't laugh at this, but it's ironic. They're so mad, they go, hey, why did this happen? And they explain to him what happened, and then they burn the wife of her father, which is what they threatened to do earlier. They killed him anyway. And so the whole thing just goes back to these people are dead, Samson's mad, now he doesn't have a wife either. So crazy, right? After all of this killing of these guys and sending these foxes and stuff, Samson gets thirsty, and he's actually mad that he doesn't have like water. And so he complains to God. He even, right before this, the Philistines are mad about like him burning all of their stuff, which, understandably so, I guess. So they come to Judah and they say, hey, we're going to attack you if you don't give us Samson. And so Judah goes to Samson and they say, hey, let us take you to the Philistines or they're going to destroy us. And Samson agrees to go because Samson has a plan. And so he gets turned over to the Philistines, he goes with them, he rips his binding off, like the ropes that are tying them together, he rips it off. He finds the jawbone of a donkey, like this, again, touching something dead, but he finds this jawbone of a donkey and kills 1,000 Philistines with this jawbone of a donkey. Like, picks it up and just goes ham on people. And he's exhausted, like he's now caught all these foxes and burned their fields, and now he's killed 1,000 of them, and so now he wants this drink of water, and he's frustrated. He even complains to God, like, you're just going to let them catch me now because I'm tired from killing all these dudes, and God provides water. But it seems like this random, like, part of the story, like, that Samson gets thirsty and he goes to God. But the thing to notice in that is Samson's doing all this stuff that's right in his own eyes. He still understands that God is providing. He still understands who God is, because in this moment of weakness, this moment of being thirsty, he recognizes that God can provide and asks for that. But Samson just keeps doing what's right in his own eyes. He keeps doing the thing that he thinks is right, ignoring the reality of God. So Samson goes on to do a couple other things. He sleeps with a prostitute who's another Philistine woman, because, I don't know, that's just Samson's way, I guess, as a player, I don't know. He gets mad and like rips their gates off the hinges and destroys their gates, and some say that he just did that for sport. And then he meets this girl named Delilah. And maybe you've heard of Delilah. She's like this really infamous character in the Bible. She's like right up there with Judas betraying Jesus, because Delilah's shady. But again, Delilah is another woman that he finds right in his eyes. He thinks she's attractive, he thinks she's hot, so he's like, okay, whatever she wants, like, I'm going to do that. I don't really get Samson. Like, your type is pagan Philistine women who are deceitful. Like, why is that your thing? But whatever. So he pursues Delilah. The lords of the Philistines recognize that, and they come to Delilah and they say, hey, we're going to pay you a ton of money if you will help us destroy Samson. If you will help us figure out his weakness, we're going to bribe you. We're going to set your family up so well. So 3 times, not once, but 3 times she goes to Samson and says, hey, tell me the secret of your strength. And all 3 times, when he falls asleep, she does whatever that thing is, and Philistines are in her house ready to kill Samson, ready to destroy him. And so 3 times Samson tells her, and he doesn't tell her the truth. She does it. He wakes up, they try to attack him, and he wrecks them because he still has his strength. I don't understand what Samson's thinking here. Like, if I tell this girl once this secret, and then she immediately betrays me with that, leading to people wanting to kill me, why would you stay with this person? Much less answer the question again, right? She does that 2 more times. 3 times, he gives her this fake answer, and then Philistines are waiting in his house to capture him. But she still presses him, and Samson still thinks she's hot, and he still wants to please her for whatever reason. And so in chapter 16, starting in verse 15, it says that she presses him again. And she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? It sounds really familiar, right, to this chick with the riddle. How can you say you love me, or I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart. And he said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. Remember, this is the last part of this covenant that Samson hasn't broken. And he realizes, he explains in this moment that this is the source of the strength. God is the source of the strength. But he's about to break this 3rd part of this commandment. It says, if my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called to the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Which is crazy, like, hey, so you just like take a nap on my knee. And then this barber walks in and cuts his hair. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza and bound with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in the prison. So he gives up this truth because Delilah distracts him from the reality that God's in control, the reality that he's made this promise to be set apart. She shakes his head, he breaks the final part of his covenant, and God's not with him anymore. And so literally the Philistines gouge out his eyes. They put their thumbs in his eyes and push his eyes like out of socket. He's blind, he can't see anymore. They take him into captivity, they make him grind in this mill, which is the hardest form of service and the lowest form of service. And he's, in the next verses we can read that they are entertained by this blind, defeated Samson. The lords of the Philistines say, hey, bring him out. Let us watch him. Let us celebrate our victory. It even gives them cause to celebrate their God because of the victory they've had over Samson and the Israelites and the one true God. And so Samson has made all of these decisions. He's done all of these things that seemed right in his eyes. Samson lives his everyday life with little or no thought of God, or of God's will, or of God's glory, or of one's dependence on God. He knew it was there. He wasn't ignorant of it because he explained it to Delilah, and he went to God when he was thirsty. He knew that was true, but he ignored it for what was right in his own eyes. I think this is most frequently what we do with God, right? We see these lines and we cross them anyway. This week, I was in a meeting here at the church, and there was this little spider, like, on the table. He was kind of running across my paper, and to be honest, I was kind of disengaged from the meeting. And so I started drawing these lines on my paper, like he would be running, and I would draw a line, and it would come up to it, and it would stop. And then it would cross it. And I'd draw another line, and it would run up to it, and it would stop, and like, is this something I can't go around? No, I can't. And then it would cross it, right? I was just thinking, like, man, this is this picture of what I do with God. Like, I run up to this line and I go, yeah, but I think it's right. And I'll keep going, right? And I'll pause and I'll recognize this. I'll have this moment of saying, like, God is in control. And he said something about this situation that I'm in. Then I'm going to keep going. I'm going to pursue it, right? Ungodliness is evident when we cross the lines that we know are wrong, right? We know what God says. We know that he's given us something on this category. But we walk up to this line and we say, I see that. But my eyes say that thing on the other side is right. I'm going to go after it. And so when we start crossing these lines, when we start crossing these boundaries, we are living an ungodly life. You're choosing your way over God's. You are an ungodly person. Right? That sounds brutal, but it's true. And the truth is it's inexcusable. Right? God reveals himself again and again, and he provides again and again, and he's created us, he's sustained us, he's saved us, all of these things, but we just keep walking up to this line and saying, I think I know better, or I think I can do this. I will handle this situation because I'm going to do what's right in my own eyes. And so we do this thing, right, where we categorize our lives. We have all these pieces and all these elements, and we decide to put them in these different buckets, right? So we have the category of like, okay, there's church, right? And then we've got school life is another thing. I don't know what's happening to this mic right now. It's kind of sketchy. Then we got work. We've got relationships. We've got like our achievements. I don't know how you spell achievements right in this moment. Like all of these things, right? Family, whatever. We have all of these things that we put our life into these categories, and we say, okay, God gets control of this one thing. Right? God is over church. When I'm at church, I understand that God's in control of that, and that's my thing. But then we categorize everything else, and we keep all of these other pieces of our life separate from that. And we ignore the fact that God is actually over all of it, right? So what does that actually look like, right? We acknowledge God at church, but then we ignore him at school. We pray before a meal, but then we don't spend time with him in his word because we would rather just scroll on our phone. We're unwilling to talk about faith with friends or family. We look for fulfillment in bad relationships and allow those relationships to influence us in harmful ways just because we want to keep them. We'll back controversial topics just to fit in. We'll base arguments on things like homosexuality and transgenderism on emotions and opinions and what that will do for our status instead of looking at truth. We give in to peer pressure. We try to build a reputation by drinking at that party or smoking pot with our friends. We bend and break God's guidelines for intimacy, and we have sex before marriage. We have sex with a bunch of people. We look at porn. We send nudes because we think that will get us something. We take pride in the lie that we're enough on our own. And we fear and seek control because we ignore the fact that God already has that. The reality is there is no part of your life that God isn't in control of. There's no part of your life that's yours and separated from Him, right? We have to start viewing this as this thing where God has control over all of it. It's not just one aspect of our life. It's not just one part that is His and the rest belongs to us. The whole thing belongs to Him. All of it. God is over every part of our life. And so when we live an ungodly life, we say, this one's mine, or this one's mine, or this one's mine. He can have that one, but I'm going to ignore Him in all these other areas. That doesn't work. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. It doesn't say do the church stuff to the glory of God. It doesn't say do the school stuff to the glory of God. It says do all of this to the glory of God. Ungodliness is ignoring this reality that He is over all of these things. And the truth is that if we really get into it, that can be maybe depressing, right? So you're telling me that I'm not in control of anything? Like there's nothing that's mine? There's nothing that's just for me? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Right? And I think our pride and our selfishness gets in this way of like seeing this as a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Living a life of ungodliness is living a life of hopelessness. If you are not surrendering on this, if you're keeping things from yourself, you're not going to succeed in that. There's no hope in that. We are broken, selfish people, and we fail time and time again. That's why God steps in. That's why Jesus comes to save us, because we need something outside of ourselves to fix this problem. And so a life that's dependent on that truth is full of hope. But if we live ungodly, if we ignore that reality, then there is no hope in that. It's going to fail. It's going to break. It's hopeless. Regardless of how we feel about that truth, it's still true. Romans 5:5 says this hope that God gives us does not put us to shame. It's not something that we have to feel bad about. It's a good thing that He has come to save us. At the end of Samson's story, at least in some way, he acknowledges God again. He's made to come out in front of these Philistines, and he's got his eyes gouged out, and all of these Philistines are gathered together in this temple. They're praising their God, and they're laughing at Samson and his God. And Samson asks if he could just feel these pillars that he's in between. So this boy that's leading him puts his hand on these pillars, and Samson recognizes God again in this moment. He asks for strength again. He says, God, just one more time, give me strength to carry out your plan. And he recognizes that this was God's plan from the beginning, that he doesn't have control over his strength, that he doesn't have anything without God, that we don't have anything without God. And in this moment, he prays for strength again, and he pushes these pillars, and it says he kills more Philistines in that moment than he had killed in his 20 years of fighting the Philistines. Right? And we talked about that one time at the jawbone, he killed 1,000 of them right there. And he killed these other 30 dudes just to get their clothes. But in this one final moment where he recognizes that God had a plan for him, he pushes these pillars and kills more than his 20 years of life before, including himself. Right? He recognizes that this was his purpose, and that God is the only one that provides that, and that I can't hold anything back. So at least at some level, Samson understands that he's got to surrender to that. All year we've talked about all of these different things, and we're kind of wrapping up next student worship today. We're about to transition into summer like we talked about. We've talked about things like identity and change. We've talked about relationships. We've talked about dealing with stress and mean people and all of this stuff throughout the year. We've talked about pride, and we've talked about fear and the things that you can do to kind of navigate that. But the truth is, full surrender to God is the only way to kill this fight. Whatever this root thing is inside of you, you can't apply any of those things that we've talked about unless you fully surrender, unless your life understands that God is over every part of it. Full surrender to God is the only way to kill this fight. It's the only way to deal with that sin. Scripture is full of these conversations about fixing our eyes on God and focusing on Him, desiring Him, because that's the only way that change is possible. Some of my favorite verses, Psalm 42, 1-2, talks about, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. Psalm 84 talks about, better is one day in God's courts than 1,000 elsewhere. Like, I just want to be in His presence. In 1 Timothy 4, Paul is explaining to Timothy how to lead the church. He says, immerse yourself in these things. Like, don't just keep your head above water, but immerse yourself in the things that God is doing. Immerse your whole life in what God wants. 1 Corinthians 15:58, we talked about this at senior night. It says, be steadfast, immovable, abounding in the work of the Lord. 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, fix your eyes not on what you can see, but what you can't see, because what you can't see is eternal, whereas the things you can see are temporary. Psalm 37:4 says, delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Again and again, God's word is pointing us to this reality that we need him. And we have to tell our soul, we have to tell our heart, the only way to achieve anything, to achieve any change, to look more like him, is full surrender to him. We talk about this word surrender at our church quite a bit. And I think like visibly seeing this position of surrender is important. Because if I'm honest, sometimes I take surrender in this position, right? Like, oh yeah, like I know that. I know I need to give that up. At JP, I've heard that verse before. I get that God should be in control of everything. I got that. Right? And sometimes we maybe take it a step further and like, man, I've got my arms open here what God wants to say. Like, I've got my arms open to what he wants to do. But then we show up at school and we put our hands back in our pocket or we just ignore that reality altogether, right? We're talking about this position in our heart, not necessarily physically, but this position in our heart where we're saying, God, I have nothing. Like, it's all yours. This full surrender of, I'm not even worthy of being in your presence. And I need you. Our heart has to take this position of full surrender if we're ever going to have this chance to look like him. And so stop living this ungodly life thinking I have control over this category or that one, or I'm going to do what's right in my eyes because I have control. You have to be in this position of full surrender, like I have nothing. But God gives us everything, and in that he lifts us up, right? He gives us hope that doesn't put us to shame. He gives us life that's beyond the things that we can see. And that's so beautiful. So this morning, I'm going to challenge you to take this position of surrender. And I'm not saying you have to get out of your chair and physically do this. You're welcome to. But in your heart, take this position of surrender. Recognize that God has authority over all things. Commit to living a life that isn't ungodly, a life that is full of him and his influence. So if you would bow your heads, close your eyes, and just take this moment to surrender to what God is telling you this morning, what he's calling you to this morning. And if that looks like getting on your knees so that you can physically remind yourself that this is what that's supposed to be, do that. If it means standing up, do that. God, in this moment, we recognize that we don't have control over anything. God, I admit that I'm frustrated by that at times. God, that I want to have control. That my pride and my fear drive me to ignore the reality that you are in control and I have nothing. God, as your word says, that's not something that should put me to shame. That's something that should bring me hope. Because you love me enough to die for me anyway. God, to give me away to you anyway. So God, this morning we come repenting of the times that we have ignored you. God, the times that we have sat down before a meal and prayed for that meal without any thought of you, but just a checklist to continue on so we can eat. God, we're sorry for the fake people that we are at school and the different personalities that we have in different places. God, and we surrender those things to you. God, we desire you in your presence and a life that's consistently in recognition of your power and your presence in our life. So God, change our hearts. Help us to surrender. Help us to trust you and your plan alone. God, surround us with community that will remind us of that. God, we're thankful for all these things and so much more. We love you. Amen. Alright, so I want to give you guys some time to debrief that and discuss it a little bit. So at your table, just kind of hang out. If you don't have a youth worker at your table, youth workers maybe move around and let's make sure there's somebody at every table. We've got some discussion questions. Just make sure that you look at the high school questions, not the middle school questions. And then when you guys are done, you're dismissed. Feel free to grab some more waffles if they're still out there. But yeah, jump into those questions together.